Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk. This is Yitzchak Rubin speaking to you from just east of Jerusalem. Today is the 19th day of the month of Av, 5782. It's August 16th, 2022. This coming Shabbat we read Parshat Ekev in the book of Deuteronomy, beginning chapter 7, verse 12, and concluding chapter 11, verse 25. It is the third Parsha, the third Torah reading of the book of Deuteronomy, in Hebrew, Devarim, meaning words. And of course, these are all the words of Moshe, the words that he spoke in his final days on earth. He spoke them to the children of Israel, the final 37 days to be exact, because we're told that he began speaking on the first day of the 11th month. And we know that he died on the 7th day of Adar, which is the 12th month. So it was for 37 days that he spoke. And those 37 days of the words of Moshe is what comprises the book of Deuteronomy. In Hebrew, Devarim, words, very simply put. This coming Shabbat is also Shabbat Mevarchin, meaning it's the Shabbat that we make a blessing in anticipation of the upcoming Rosh Chodesh. And the upcoming Rosh Chodesh, of course, is Rosh Chodesh Elul, Ani Ladodi Vadodi Li, the month that is the prosdor. It is the hallway leading into the month of Tishrei, which is, of course, the month of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, first month of the New Year cycle. There's more than one New Year, as you know, in the Hebrew calendar, 4 in all, and Tishrei is one of them. But Elul is a very beautiful month because it's the month of anticipation, of preparation. And as I mentioned a moment ago, Ani Dodi Li are the Rashi Tivot of Ani Dodi Vadodi Li. That's mean the first letter of each of those 4 Hebrew words spells the word Elul. And what does it mean? Ani Dodi Vadodi Li? Well, it's from the Song of Songs, and it means I am my beloved, and my beloved is mine. And that is a description of the relationship between Israel and HaShem. That is the relationship that we strive for, that closeness, that intimacy. But it happens that Rosh Chodesh Elul will be not this Shabbat, but the following Shabbat. So it will be a Shabbat Rosh Chodesh, which is always very special. But again, in anticipation, we will be making a special blessing on this upcoming Shabbat, Shabbat Mevarchin. We're in the middle of the summer here in Israel and everywhere in the world, except if you, I guess, are below the equator, then you're in the middle of the winter. But here we're in the middle of the summer, and we're in the middle of election seasons here in Israel. We just concluded a very short 3-day war with an Islamic Jihad terror group in Gaza. And we're just moving along here. The momentum of people going up to the Temple Mount continues to build. And of course we have peaks. We just had a recent peak that was on Tisha B'Av, which was just a week ago, Sunday, Tisha B'Av, when more than 2,000 Jews went up to the Temple Mount, and the numbers are still high. Of course, we don't have those numbers on a regular day, and we probably would if the hours weren't so limited as they still are, but we're pushing forward and slowly moving ahead and reawakening awareness and longing for not just the Temple Mount, but for the Holy Temple here in Israel. It's becoming a thing. It really is slowly growing, and more people's mind, more and more people's hearts. And you know, there used to be back in the 1970s, I guess, a commercial for Levy's rye bread, and the commercial was, you don't have to be Jewish to love Levy's rye bread. And they showed people of all different ethnicities enjoying Levy's rye bread. Well, you don't have to be religious to be inspired by the Temple Mount. or to long for the Holy Temple. You don't have to be Jewish to be inspired by the Temple Mount, to long for the Holy Temple. You merely need to be part of the program and to hold the Temple Mount as the holiest place on earth, and the Holy Temple as a house of prayer for all nations. And it's not as distant as we think. I don't think. Some people say, talking light years away. I don't think so. I think the first real step, and the first major step, and maybe the biggest step, even bigger than the actual building and all that will entail, is simply freedom of worship for all God-fearing people on the Temple Mount. And that's the biggest obstacle, but that's an obstacle of the heart and of the mind. And the heart and the mind can be very stubborn. And the government of Israel imposed all these limitations on non-Muslim worship over 50 years ago. But slowly, with tremendous effort and persistence, we are wearing away at that old status quo. And more and more Jews are praying more openly and more freely and more emphatically on the Temple Mount. And as people of all nations, of all faiths, are returning after the cold years of the COVID, are returning to the Temple Mount, I hope that they are also finding it easier to express themselves religiously, because that's what it's all about. It's not intended to be a place where every different religion is going to have its little corner and pray, separately from everybody else. No, it's intended to be a place where everyone meets together and worships together, everybody in their own manner, but together, openly, freely, without fear, because we're all praying to the same God. And I believe that God is very capable of hearing all our prayers and of answering those prayers which God feels fit to answer positively. So I don't feel challenged or intimidated by the prayers of other faiths on the Temple Mount. My faith is in HaShem, and I trust Hashem's ability to hear and to determine whose prayers get heard, and to bring people together. That's what it's all about. The Temple Mount and the Holy Temple. And, one of the biggest obstacles is the media, because the media loves to portray the Temple Mount as, a tinderbox, a powder keg, dynamite ready to explode, World War III, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And with all the, all the ups and downs and moments when it was going to happen, it hasn't happened. And the fact of the matter is, when Jews are on the Temple Mount praying peacefully, there's peace on the Temple Mount. When Jews are on the Temple Mount praying peacefully, Muslims are also praying peacefully on the Temple Mount. The only time that there's trouble and violence is when the police don't allow Jews on the Temple Mount. And it doesn't have to be that way either, because if the Temple Mount really is a holy place to the Muslims of the world, then it should be a place of peace as well. And that's, that's up to the Muslims to really answer that question. I posted something today in response to an article in the New York Times this week that as background to a terror incident that happened here in Jerusalem on Saturday night. Shots were fired at a bus just outside the Western Wall Plaza, and 8 Jews on the bus were injured, 2 very seriously, including a pregnant woman who had to C-section her and bring the baby out, and the baby is fine, last I heard, and she's okay. But of course, that incident was perpetrated by a Palestinian of East Jerusalem, and the temple, blah 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 blah. The New York Times wrote an article about it, and as part of the background, they mentioned the Temple Mount, and they mentioned that it is the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount is the third holiest place in Islam. And by the way, the Jews believe that the two ancient temples stood in the mountain. It's something that's. I'm going to look for the exact wording if I can right now. Hold on 1 minute. I'm going to look for the exact wording. Their exact wording was, wait for it, sacred to both Jews and Muslims, the nearby Temple Mount houses the third holiest mosque in Islam and was the location in antiquity of two ancient Jewish temples that remain important to Jewish identity. Wow. Could you try to diminish the importance of those ancient temples anymore? You did a good job. You did a job of minimizing how sacred, how important, how holy that place is to us. Jews don't look at those temples as ancient temples. We look at those temples as holy temples that were destroyed, each in its own day, each in its own time, for its own reasons. And the holy temple is something that is always in our hearts. And we long to build one, a new one. We hope to build one. We hope soon. That's how important it is to the Jews, okay? And it happens to be the holiest place on earth for Jews, not just the third holiest place. So why don't you mention that in your article, the New York Times? So, we tend to get indignant when the New York Times casually disses the Jewish connection to the Temple Mount. And they did mention that it's sacred to Jews, but they could have done a much more accurate job and a much more sincere job of mentioning its importance to Jews today, and to not just Jews today, to Gentiles, to Christians who find the Temple Mount to be a very holy place. So, New York Times, respect it. Respect it. We're going to be talking about Parshat Ekev in just a moment. I have some other news which I'd like to share with you. And it's news that we've been keeping under wraps for a long time for certain very important reasons, which I'll mention in a moment. And I'm going to say this because I want to share it with you. But I sort of want to keep the excitement on a low flame, because there just are so many obstacles and potential pitfalls along the way that I don't want people to be overly excited and then disappointed. And also, I guess I don't want to give it an evil eye by overstating it. But at this moment, a very important thing is happening, and hopefully we will soon be able to report on a small number of red heifer candidates here in Israel. That, God willing, of that small number, we will actually be able to convert one red heifer into the purifying ashes of the red heifer, which is a big green light for everything that happens next in terms of preparation for and building the Holy Temple and renewal of the avoda, of the divine service in the Holy Temple, the offerings, etc., etc. So I'm not going to give any more detail, but I hope very soon to be able to share openly what I've just mentioned about the red heifers. And again, we have been working on trying to raise a red heifer here in Israel for many, many years. And we've had some close calls. We've had some exciting moments, and we've had some disappointments. So I don't want people to get overly excited. I'm sorry, because I don't want you then to be overly disappointed if things don't follow through. But I do want to share this news because I know that we're often asked what's going on, and I want you to realize that, yes, concrete steps and measures have been made all along to bring this holy project to fruition. And hopefully in the near future we'll be able to report more positive news, and a little bit more openly. By that I mean maybe some photos or some videos. But right now I ask everyone to simply your prayers that we should succeed in each step of the way toward arriving ultimately with the ashes of the red heifer, which enable us to achieve the highest level of Torah purity, of biblical purity, which will enable us to forge ahead with plans to build a holy temple. Now, it's not the last stumbling block, for sure, but it's a major one, and it's a major one that once we achieve the ashes, we have them. And they're ready. So, as I said, keep it in mind, keep it in your heart, and think good things, good thoughts, and hopefully we'll be able to share more news in the near future. Parshat Ekev, which begins Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 12, including chapter 11, verse 25. I'm going to read in Hebrew the first few verses, and in English, V'haya Ekev tishma'un et hamishpatim ha'ele ushmartem v'asitem otam v'shamar HaShem Elokecha lecha et habrit ve'et ha'chesed asher nishba lavotecha v'ahavcha uverachacha v'hirabecha uverach pri vitenecha ufri adamatecha degancha v'tiroshacha v'yitzharecha shgar alafecha v'ashtrot sonecha al ha'adama asher nishba lavotecha latet lach. This shall be the reward when you hearken to these ordinances, and you observe and perform them. HaShem your God will safeguard for you the covenant and the kindness that he swore to your forefathers. He will love you, bless you, and multiply you, and he will bless the fruit of your womb and the fruit of your land, your grain, your wine, and your oil, the offspring of your cattle, and the flocks of your sheep and goats, on the land that he swore to your forefathers to give you. And I'm going to read a few more verses now in English. You will be the most blessed of all the peoples. There will be no infertile male or infertile female among you or among your animals. HaShem will remove you from every illness and all the bad maladies of Egypt that you knew. He will not put them upon you, but will put them upon all your foes. You will devour all the people that HaShem your God will deliver to you. Your eyes shall not pity them. You shall not worship their gods, for it is a snare for you. So, first of all, Moshe is preparing the people to enter into the land. And so everything up to now, everything up to the book of Numbers was really very, congregation-oriented, very encampment-oriented. Really the parameters of the language, even though the mitzvot, the commandments, are universal and to be obeyed and performed, in exile and in the land, etc., etc., the parameters and the style and the actual vocabulary was very wilderness-oriented. Now here in the book of Deuteronomy, Moshe's words are focused on the land of Israel, because that's where the people are going to next without Moshe, and he wants them to be prepared. The word Ekev, very interesting word, which can't really be translated in the context of this sentence, because the word Ekev means heel. Heel. The word Jacob, because he grabbed the heel of Esav, his brother, coming out of the womb. And so Ekev means heel, and it's sort of a word implying emphasis, like if we remove that word, we still get the same sentence. This shall be the reward when you hearken to these ordinances. Now, I see here in this translation, which is the Stone Edition translation, they're actually translating Akev as reward because they're emphasizing the bonus, the plus. If you hearken to these ordinances, but Akev is really here used for emphasis. Like if you really hearken, you'll get this. But again, it's an unusual wording, and so that always catches the eye of our sages, who try to understand. And I'm going to read now a different translation, and it says, "And if you will be, because you will heed these ordinances," right? Heed is how this. It's actually a Chabad translation, how the Chabad translation translates Akev, heal, to heed, which kind of is a more loyal translation, I think, because heed kind of has that emphasis that I mentioned a moment ago. And this is what Rashi says about that. Akev, he says, literally heal. If you will heed the minor commandments, which one usually tramples upon with his heels, right? As in, he's speaking poetically. He doesn't mean literally, God forbid, someone tramples on commandment with their heels. It means you regard as being of minor importance. So it's an easy one, or it's not so important. So, either I won't bother, or I'll just do it without my full attention. Without really my full kavanah, which is the Hebrew word for intention, for focusing your mind. So the word heal is used to mean something that's at the bottom, something that you use to trample on things. The heel, on the other hand, is of all importance. If we didn't have a heel, we couldn't stand. We couldn't walk. So heel is of all importance. On the other hand, if we just walk on things casually, if we treat commandments casually, then it's not the same as treating them with the proper regard. And this is going to be a recurring theme, that Hashem's not asking us simply to perform the commandments, to fulfill the commandments. Just do it by rote, just to do it. That's not what he really wants out of us. We'll read later that, you need to perform them with all your heart. Just like we need to love Hashem with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our might. These aren't just words used, flowery words to use for poetic emphasis. This is how Hashem wants us to honor the Torah. Not simply to, do it casually, but to really, do it with all we've got. And if you do it with all we've got, then all these blessings will follow. And again, we're going to hear blessings over and over and over again in the book of Deuteronomy, and we're also going to hear curses or bad ramifications, I think is a better way to express it, if we don't do the commandments. And if we don't do the commandments with all our heart and our soul and our might, then there's a negative effect. Bad things happen. Not as punishment, but as ramification, as the reality. That's the reality, because the land of Israel is, pardon me if I sound chauvinistic about the land of Israel, every land on earth was created by Hashem, and every land on earth is beloved by Hashem and highly regarded by Hashem, but there's no land on earth like the land of Israel, and Hashem says so as much via Moshe, or Moshe says so as much, however you like to put it, more than once, many times, and in many ways here in the book of Deuteronomy. And, right now in the world, in the Western world, especially in liberal and progressive circles, nationalism of any kind is frowned upon. we're all supposed to be universal, and we're all supposed to be have no ethnic or particular identity. It's like we're all supposed to lose our DNA. And then, of course, that's just stage one. Stage two is we become, not only identity fluid, but gender fluid and everything else fluid, until we've got nothing going for us. We got nothing left that we were born with, that we were blessed with, that God intended us to have and to care for. Okay, so the Western world today, the progressive side, doesn't like nationalism, doesn't like people who find land to be important. Who needs land? We can live in an apartment 12 stories high. You know what? We can build a Migdal Bavel. We can build a Tower of Babel, and just live up so high up in the heavens, higher than God. And nobody needs to worry about land or anything else. The big brother's going to take care of you. No, sorry. We don't buy into that. The Torah doesn't buy into that. And we here in Israel don't buy into that. And anybody who really holds the Torah in high regard and believes and listens and hears and respects what it has to say, will tell you that those progressive pipe dreams are nonsense and very destructive and very corrosive to all society. Every nation should hold its land precious and take care of it and honor it and work it in a way that it will produce and bless. And so when you read these blessings, they're the simplest blessings in the world. Health and bounty. There'll be rain so that we have what to drink, and rain so that we'll have bountiful crops, and our livestock, our flocks will be plentiful and healthy, and we too will be plentiful and healthy and fertile, meaning we'll be productive and reproductive and growing. Again, another thing that's very unpopular in the Western world today, that people should have children. The Torah does not see things that way, and the Jews do not see things that way. And I know that God-fearing people and many decent people around the world don't see things that way. It's important to have children, and that's part of our blessing. That's part of our blessing, that we'll have children, healthy children. So this theme is going to continue over and over and over again, all throughout the book of Deuteronomy. Now, moving along in Akev, there's a recap right after all this of the incident of the golden calf. And the two tablets of the law, the golden calf, and the shattering of the tablets. And Moshe, again, as he, throughout the book of Deuteronomy, he is recapping and recounting the major events that happened during the 40 years in the wilderness, major events that Israel needs to always remember and always learn from. And also, he mentions the rebellion of Korach. And again, he's talking to us. So many times it says, you today, all who are standing here today, meaning us, not just the people who were standing in front of him way back when, but us today. And all these things are so relevant. Everything that he has to say about the land of Israel, of course, is so relevant to us today, especially here in the land of Israel. And I want to read one other section. I'm going to read two other sections. One is in chapter 10, verse 12. Now, O Israel, what does HaShem your God ask of you? Only to fear HaShem your God, to go in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve HaShem your God with all your heart and with all your soul, to observe the commandments of HaShem and his decrees, which I command you today for your benefit. Behold, to HaShem your God are the heaven and the highest heaven, the earth and everything that is in it. Only your forefathers did HaShem cherish to love them, and he chose their offspring after them, you, from among all the peoples as this day. You shall cut away the barrier of your heart and no longer stiffen your necks, etc., etc. And it just goes on and gets more and more beautiful. Read it for yourselves, I beseech you. These words, these verses, and all these parshiot and all these Torah readings of Deuteronomy are just so beautiful, so inspiring. But again, I read these particular verses because, once again, just do the commandments, do them with all your heart, and everything in the land will be good. That's the big challenge here in the land of Israel. Outside enemies, we have plenty. And thank God we have a strong army today, and we can defend ourselves. But the real challenge, way beyond that, is internally, how we regard one another, how we relate to HaShem, because those are what the commandments are all about. They're all about how we treat one another and how we honor HaShem. That's it. And if we do those things in this land, then we will prosper in this land and we'll be safe in this land. And when we prosper and we're safe, we will build a holy temple, and all the nations will come to this land to worship HaShem and to pray and converse and be in contact with HaShem in the holiest place on earth. So that's the great challenge of Israel today. You know, we have, like every other nation in the world, we have military challenges, we have economic challenges, we have all sorts of social challenges, and all sorts of, everything else, bureaucratic challenges, all sorts of nonsense that all the nations face. But Israel, again, it's not just Israel. All the nations, how we treat one another, how we regard HaShem is so essential for national health. It's so important. It's important everywhere, in every country on earth, in every nation on earth. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. But here it's written out over and over in the book of Deuteronomy that you follow the commandments that you've received, right? They're all there before you. They're all clear. And throughout our thousands of years of history, our sages, our rabbis, our wise men have constructed the way in which we can physically and actually manifest all these commandments, some which are more described in greater detail in the Torah itself, and some in less detail, meaning it's up to us, up to our sages, to work out how we're actually supposed to fulfill these commandments. But that's what our living religion, that's what our living tradition is about. That's what living Torah is all about, working out those ways. And then again today, in the land of Israel, in a modern world, in a modern society, with modern technology, how do these same commandments that were received all those thousands of years ago apply? That's what we do. That's what we're working on. That's how it works. That's what's important. And again, that's what will keep us going, keep us flourishing. Again, you don't have to be religious to keep commandments. You don't have to believe in God to have a relationship with God. Once you have a relationship with God, you're there. Belief is great, but it's like believing in the person that you're talking to. Yes, believing means trust, faith, and acknowledgement. And we need to have trust and faith and acknowledge one another, and have trust and faith and acknowledge HaShem. And when we do that, we will, each in all our own lands, and especially here in the land of Israel, flourish, and the world will be a better place. Thank you for being with me. Temple Talk.